Hello, BookTube. Well, recently, despite all my predictions to the contrary, this channel reached 20,000 subscribers. And as is the custom in our little corner of BookTube, that called for a Q&A. I put out a call for questions, and I got lots of them. So we're going to go through them. I've got the trusty iPad here. The only preliminary I should say is that I ported all these things bulked over from the comment section of the video where I asked for them. So if in the process I garble or even omit a question and it happens to be yours, well, there's no censorship involved. Just ask your question next time. Sorry about that. So let's start off here. Okay, question number one is, oh, you poor thing, congratulations on the milestone. No, well, okay, thank you. That's not the question, though. Question number two, hi, Steve, congrats on not getting to 20K. I always said we would never get to 20K, and we did. I've got a couple of questions, but you don't have a couple of questions. You have a barrage of questions, a long decalogue of questions. Number one, what's a book you reread every year no matter what? Oh, there are quite a few. Some are actually codified. Every June I reread the Iliad. Every August I reread the Odyssey. But others happen anyway. Other rereads happen anyway. I reread Dune pretty much every year. I reread A Princess of Mars pretty much every year. I now reread Wolf Hall pretty much every year. At some point or other, I am just by whim or by something I've read driven into it. Question number two, what's one classic everyone pretends to love but is secretly unreadable? Well, real readers don't pretend to love classics, especially if they didn't love them. But there is a whole band of people out there, dude bros, and the answer for them would be Anatomy of Melancholy, which they all claim to love because it's big and it absolutely, adamantly, for 1,000 pages, refuses to admit that women are real. So they love it. It's an absolute guaranteed dude bro conversation stopper, and they love that. It makes them feel erudite. Question number three, can you name a perfect novel? No. Question number four, what's a book you think should be required reading in high schools but never is? Well, I don't think there should be required reading in high school, if anything. I think the minute you put the word required in front of reading, you kill what reading is. And I think I'm proven out to be true because of how many high school students were enthusiastic readers before they got there and left saying, I'm never going to read a book again. It becomes on par with all the other unpleasant things you are forced by coercion to do in high school, when reading is... If I were designing a high school reading curriculum, it would be arranged in fundamentally different ways. It would be arranged in ways that my school board, which would be entirely manned by Trump cult young earth creationists, would never allow. But if I could design it, it would be voluntary reading where we would have to come up with some other metric for whether or not the student is doing the work. Because you can't expect the teacher to have read every book the student picks. But something like anything other than you're all going to read this book, you're all going to read it this much at a time, and then you're all going to parrot points on it. Ugh. And question number five from your couple of questions. If a Martian asked you what is a novel, what is the novel, which book would you hand them? Okay, well, there aren't any Martians. There's no possibility of life on the surface of Mars. But I wouldn't hand them a novel as an example of what a novel is. I would give them a definition. Isn't that a lot easier? And bonus question, as if the two weren't enough. What's a book Frida has literally tried to eat? Frida doesn't do that. She doesn't destroy anything. She thinks it's really dumb, so she doesn't even try. Thank you, Steve. Lulu, my Jack Russell Terrier, sends her smooches to you and Frida. Well, her smooches would not go far with Frida, but they are gratefully accepted from me. Okay, then we move on to, I don't know if I'll be able to read all these names. Some of them look like gobbledygook to me. Sandwichism. Congratulations on 20K. I have a very simple question that I've been dying to know. How many books do you read per day on average? I always hear you talking about books going on your reading pile for tonight, but how many books is that typically? And do you always finish the books you start? I do always finish the books I start, and it ranges depending on the book. I mean, technically, the Cambridge History of the Holocaust is one book, technically, but it's 4 700-page volumes, and it's taken me a while to get through it and digest it. Typically, though, it's 3. I mean, most books are around 250 pages long, most of them. That's a couple of hours for me, at most. at most, and that's if the book is paying attention. That's if the book is on its game, and that's, my hat is off to all of you. You are all my heroes for working in 2 hours of reading a day in the midst of all the rest of the stuff that you do. But it's the only thing I do, aside from take care of Frida, who needs very little care. She needs very little care. So it's the only thing I do. So when I say that a 250-page book is 2 hours, thereabouts, I'm not talking about a large amount of my reading time in that day. So I have a lot more time to do this, to get it done. Read by Fred is here. Congrats on 20K, Steve. My question and follow-up. Do people recognize you in public because of your channel? And if so, do they say hello and chat? What's the craziest or most frequent question you've been asked from a situation like this? People do. People have approached me. It's probably happened a couple of dozen times. Usually in situ. Usually they approach me only because they see me at the Brattle sale lot, or see me at the shop and feel emboldened to do that. Or otherwise they seek me out at the shop. So they'll be visiting Boston with their significant other. There's always the significant other who has no idea who this old guy is that you listen to all the time. And you will be telling, the significant other will be saying, well, the museum opens at 11, and there's another museum that opens at 11 too. We can work those in. And you're all anxious, but not for the museum. You're saying, no, Steve gets to the Brattle carts early. Usually it's that, and it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. There is no uniform question, though. And, it's the oddest thing. I don't mean to sound like all that, of course. I don't think of myself as all that. But the oddest thing is that most of the time when people approach me like that, they are nervous. I don't want to say starstruck, but they're nervous. It's not a question, but the number one thing that I have heard the most often in those situations is, I can't believe I'm actually talking to you. Which really is strange. Well, Fred, you're a booktuber, so you know what I'm talking about. We are all engaged in this parasocial relationship. And our little corner of BookTube is full of great booktubers, people who make great videos all the time, or Christopher Russell, for the opposite of that. And so I think we lose sight of the fact that we are outnumbered 100 to 1 by the people who don't make videos. If you watch somebody on a TV, especially, I've seen pictures of gigantic wall-sized plasma screen TVs where whole families watch my videos every day. If you watch somebody on that screen day after day after day, I think it's going to inculcate in you an idea that that person is not like you. Or that it's an act, or both. And then when they meet you in person, and not only are you like them, but you're exactly the same when no camera's rolling, the most common reaction I get is a little bit of happy befuddlement. I can't believe this is real, and that you're a real person. You're acting exactly the same. I'm not going to be able to read a lot of these names, but we'll just deal with that. Congratulations on 20K. Thank you. 2 quick questions. Yeah, we'll see about that. Number 1, aside from Pepys and Boswell, what are some of your other favorite published journals and diaries? Well, you mentioned Pepys. John Evelyn is always forgotten. John Evelyn is contemporary and wrote diaries, and they're good. They don't have the weird unself-consciousness that Pepys has, but they are very, very good. Margot Asquith, I believe it's Yale or Princeton that puts out a collection of her war diaries, the journals that she kept during the war, and they're very, very good. Also, Chips Cannon. If you want to lay out the money, in every anthology of diaries that's ever existed in the last 100 years, there's always a section for Chips Cannon because he kept a very lively diary. It's very readable. It reads like a Waugh novel. And I forget who the publisher is, but some publishers recently undertaken to publish all the unexpurgated, unedited, unabbreviated Chips Cannon diary. It's a feast. Just a feast. If you love diaries, you've got to read that. And question number 2: if you were to curate a new series of cheap paperback reprints, what kinds of books would you choose to bring back? First of all, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But cheap paperback reprints, why would I need to? It implies that I want a different kind of book. If I could curate a collection of cheap paperback reprints, it would be $3 mass market size floppy spine Penguin black spine classics. It would be that. Those things would sell out their print runs instantly. They would sell out their print runs if you did that. And I don't believe the publishing industry would have you to believe that if you price a book at $3 and it sells out at print run, it doesn't matter because the cost of making it is prohibitively high. I don't believe that. And I've yet to see a publisher provide any kind of evidence of that. I don't believe that. I think it's just greed. But whether it's true or not, if you bring out a 30-book line, a nice floppy spined mass market paperback of the Three Musketeers in a Penguin for $3, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and all of Jane Austen, and all of Charles Dickens, you're going to make your money back. That's not going to lose you money. So that's what I would do. I wouldn't curate anything new. I would just do that. I don't know why those things don't exist still. Rena is reading, says, my condolences on 20K, Steve, but it's been a fun 9 years of your channel. I'm always happy to see you in my feed. Is it 9 years? I started in 2016. Yeah, it's 9 years. Good Lord. Number one, do you think that Billion Butterflies climate book is worth reading? It is. It is. It's not going to blow you away, but it is. Learning about how we got to blob watch technology seems interesting, but I can't tell how it falls between pop science and academic. Are you still talking about Billion Butterflies? I'm not sure I understand the question, and that's going to be a guiding rule for these questions. I haven't looked at them at all. But the guiding rule is going to be, if I don't think I understand the question, I'm not going to take a flyer. So let's just move on to number 2. Has the bean warmed up any more to Spencer or any other dog friends in the neighborhood? Oh, well, Spencer doesn't live here anymore. His owner moved out a long time ago. Pretty much right after I was mentioning him on this channel. For those of you who don't know what Rena is reading is talking about, Spencer was a basset hound who moved into the neighborhood right next door. So we were encountering him all the time. And Lucy was my basset hound, and Frida never met her. She died before Frida came to me. So it was fascinating to see my little dog now with dogs now. Frida, she doesn't really warm up to dogs. There are a handful of dogs in the neighborhood who she at least knows. She knows and recognizes them. And they know and recognize her, so there's no need for any kind of posturing at all. They know not to try to play with her. She doesn't like play. She doesn't like anything frivolous. They know not to do anything like that. They just sniff her, and it's pleasant. I get to smooch with them, and she doesn't get upset, and that's the most I can hope for. She doesn't have any dog friends. Really, she doesn't. It was really funny the other day. We were on a walk, and we encountered a guy walking a miniature schnauzer. And the two of them looked at each other and then beelined for each other and were sniffing each other and stiff-legging around each other. And the owner of the other schnauzer was saying, wow, this is so weird. He ordinarily sounds off like a 21-gun salute when he sees another dog. He's not aggressive. He just needs to be really loud. And I said, I know exactly what you mean. And she ordinarily does the same thing. And they're not doing it with each other because they recognize fellow psychos. Let's see here. Unpotted says, pigs are flying and hell hath frozen over. Congratulations, Steve. Couldn't happen to an insert adjective here person. DDB says, thank you for embracing a 20K Q&A and not fighting it. I'm after a recommendation or your personal favorite in the, let's call it, survival genre. Sea, desert, mountains, jungle, snow, or ice, wherever doesn't matter. It can be fiction or non-fiction, although one of each would be great. Live long and prosper. Of course, I don't have a single favorite. I probably have a favorite for each of those biomes, and I obviously can't rattle off a list like that in a Q&A. But maybe I should have I done a survival kit? A starter kit for survival literature? I thought I had. An extreme adventure starter kit. Maybe I should do that. Jeff's Cave of Cool Books says, congrats on reaching 20K milestone, Steve. Well deserved. Don't ever change. Okay, DYOG something or other. Congrats, Steve. Number 1, do you have much poetry memorized? And if so, what benefits has it personally brought you? It doesn't bring me any benefits. It doesn't bring anybody any benefits. It usually brings negatives because it's usually done as a dude bro conversation stopper, or not a dude bro. It's usually done as a conversation stopper. Dude bros don't memorize poetry. But But I have chunks of poetry memorized, but not because I sat there and repeated it until I memorized it. It stuck in my mind. And question number 2, how would you characterize the virtues and vices of David Bentley Hart's work? Most prose mostly, but if you have thoughts regarding his fiction, I'd love to hear about it. I largely like it. The vices, I would say, was that I think he has a small penchant for pedantry, which I think he keeps under control. I don't think it's a big thing at all. Thanks for being a constant presence for us. That comes naturally. Kit Kat asks, congratulations on 20K. My question would be, what books do you read to cheer yourself up? It's been some mighty dark days lately. I'd love to just escape a while. Okay. All right. Well, this is a pleasant occasion. This is a happy occasion. We're doing a Q&A. So I won't darken things up, but I will just parenthetically stress, you should not be escaping into books. You should be escaping this country. You should be emigrating from this country while you still can. Anyway, actually, I know you're probably expecting me to say a dog book here or a shark book here or Jeeves and Wooster, but actually, oddly enough, I don't know that I've made this clear on this channel. I don't know that I could. I admit, a little strange. Any book will do for me. Up until the moment that I open the book, I am going on and on about, oh yeah, you wrote this one last year and it was a stinker, or oh yeah, this subject is dumb, or oh yeah, I think I understand exactly what you're going to do. I'm going on and on like that until the moment when I open the book, and then all that goes away, and I am just gushingly eager. The experience of starting a new book is just gushingly eager and happy. A whole new world, a whole new set of experiences. Who knows what it will be like? Who knows what this author will do? Even an author that I've known, even an author that has written 20 books. Who knows what they'll do this time? That feeling is genuine. I know it sounds like hooey, but I feel that every time I open a book. The only example I can think of where I wouldn't feel that is when I know ahead of time that the book wants to crush that very feeling. So I will not be reading fascist memoirs in the 21st century, for instance, because there's no way that I'm ever going to get anything out of it. It's just poison. So aside from that, any book will do. Any book really will cheer me up until it doesn't. And even when in a case like that, like if I open a book on I don't even know, the partition of India and Pakistan, and it's a new 250-page book, and I'm griping about it up until the moment, saying, for instance, that's not long enough. And then all that goes away, and I experience that wonderful moment of my mind just clearing, and all of a sudden I'm opening a new book. Isn't this wonderful? I'm opening a new book. Even if I read through it and it's dumb, even that's going to bring me pleasure. So it's in a way. So I cheer myself up just with books, just in general. 10 Studio Set. Steve, congratulations and thank you for introducing me to so many books. Wonderful. No questions at this time. Okay, not asking anything. KPR something or other. Number 1, what is your favorite screen adaptation of Jane Eyre? I've never seen one I liked. And question number 2, which book in the Gilead novels is your favorite/least favorite and why? Well, I don't have a least favorite. I think probably I like Jack most, but I know that critics don't tend to. There's something a little bit more relaxed and wise about Jack, I think, than the others. The others are still wise, but they aren't. I could almost guess that the 10 authors she read right before she wrote Jack. And there's an aura to it. I don't know. Maybe I'm making it up. That I think is different. Gray Sinza asks, congratulations, Steve. What non-literary periodicals besides Architectural Digest do you regularly read? National Geographic, Scientific American. Boy, it's like the third time that people are setting parameters on their questions. Are you asking or are you telling me? I don't at the moment subscribe to National Geographic. I don't at the moment subscribe to Scientific American. I don't at the moment subscribe to any periodicals that are not book related. And I mean to change that. I meant to subscribe to New York Magazine when David Murphy was here. I meant to have him go nosing around, find what the best deal is, what the best workout is. For it, but we had so much to do that we didn't get around to it, and there are some others too. National Geographic actually would be high on the list. I haven't done it. It's one of those things where I always tell myself, you should set aside an hour to subscribe to a bunch of magazines, and I don't do it. because I'm reading instead. Scott Harris asks, what was the reason you wanted to start a BookTube channel? Honestly, it looked like fun. That's the only reason. It looked like fun, and it turned out to be an enormous amount of fun. We are all poking fun at each other every week. We're all learning from each other every week. We're all responding to each other every week. People are visiting here for wine and calzones. It has turned out to be an enormous amount of fun. For the longest time, though, when I was watching BookTube, I was thinking, well, it looks like a lot of fun, but I'll never be able to do it. I can barely use an iPad. How could I possibly film a video? That turned out not to be true. It's actually very simple. If you want it to be, it's very simple. Little Felix says, why is almost every robust, healthy boy with a robust, healthy soul in him at some time or other crazy to go to sea? That's a quote. I want to ask why young Steve wanted to travel the world. Because of the books you'd read? Perhaps no, not because of the books. Wouldn't anybody want to travel? I guess I'm asking that in earnest. Are there any people listening to me who, if they were provided with the means, would not travel? Real stay-at-home, real homebodies? I at least was not one of them. I never even thought I needed to come up with a reason, because it's there. That was the reason. Maybe there would be more complex reasons for why I sailed as much as I did, because that's not just traveling. That's taking your life in your own hands. Maybe there are more reasons for that, but mostly it was because it was there. Renee says, Steve, thanks for putting out fantastic content and getting me to read more broadly. Hats off to you and your little dog. Congratulations. She's done nothing. She's a freeloader. Familoner? See, these names will be difficult. They don't have, they're just the @ symbol and then the channel or the person's handle or whatnot. In what ways would you be a different person today if you had lived your life exactly the way you had, except for all the time you spent reading, you would have watched TV instead? Well, a large part of my life was lived because of all the books I read, right? I have been a critic and a freelance editor for a huge, and worked at a bookstore, but leaving the bookstore aside, my livelihood has been books that whole time. So if I'd only watched TV instead and never any books, first of all, I'd be a lot dumber. But if I'd watched TV only, I guess I would have become a TV critic, an entertainment critic of some kind, movies, TV, something like that, and maybe I'd have hoped to make the jump. The death of TV was the beginning of cable and also the beginning of so-called reality TV. That what was largely the death of television. And once you have a TV in your pocket all day long, you don't need to worry about. I don't know what TV critics are still around. They used to have a spot on the nightly news. Now I don't know that there are any that still exist and make a living. I don't have any idea. I don't have any idea. Unless you're saying, would I not be a critic either? In which case, who knows? Who knows? Carlos says, what are your current and past practices regarding travel? You were discussing a book you purchased at the Strand and mentioned that was likely the last time you'd ever visit New York, and you were discussing a book on India and mentioned how you had traveled and lived there. Well, I don't have any current practices on travel. My traveling days are over. The most I will do is get in a car driven by someone else and have them bring me to some spot on, after an hour on a highway. That's not really traveling. If what I understand you to mean by traveling, that I'm not going to do anymore. And I know you could say that going to New York is a big version of that, but it's not practical. Even New York is not practical. So unless I were to put Frida in a car with me and go, and that's a lot. That's a lot to do. But as far as going to far-flung parts of the country or leaving the country, those days are over. So my past practice was that I would pick a spot that I wanted to go. I would go there. I would move all around from there. That would sometimes be my home base. And I would move all around from there, go wherever anybody was going. My favorite means of going long distance was to walk, but otherwise it was to bum travel. I almost never paid for railway lines or anything. I did, but I did plenty, but I didn't want to. I always wanted to meet people and say, oh, well, are you going up country? Can we go with you? Put the dogs in the back. I'll sit in the front. I got a lot of yeses. I got almost no nos. In any country, in any culture, I got almost no one saying no to that. I'm kind of a friendly guy, so that works a lot. But I would do that, and if the home base that I was at, where I was going to all these places, if it was particularly congenial, then I would live there for a bit. I wouldn't just be visiting. I would live there. I did that a dozen, 14 times. But I don't do that anymore. I go from the little book room to the fainting couch and back. Joshua says, "Congrats, Steve, on 20K. I've been a long time listener, and your videos have comforted me through a lot of life. I appreciate everything you do." Well, isn't that nice to hear? I've read a few great single-volume histories of both the Americas and Europe that try to integrate all of that continent's history during a period into a cohesive narrative. For example, I love Charles Mann's books about America pre- and post-Columbian exchange. Do you have any similar books you could recommend about Asian history? Might be a tall order given the scope, but anything along those lines would be amazing. I don't think I do. I would have to think about it for probably an hour. I certainly couldn't do it in a Q&A. I don't think I do, though. Really Random Read says, quote, "I really struggled with..." Oh, no, it's not a quote. It's just your question. "I really struggled with Olga Tokarzyk's books of Jacob. I know it's thought highly of. What did you get from it that I'm missing? Congratulations on 20K subscribers." Well, I really liked it, but I'm not sure that I got anything out of it that you're missing. It could just be that you're not in the mood. I mean, it's in an intentionally recondite book. I think intentionally it's the closest that you come to a woman trying to write a dude bro book. And to the extent that she fails is the extent that the book succeeds. But it might just not have. It's not a natural thing to read at all. It's very much an acquired thing. So it's probably just that you're not in the mood for it. I would wait a year and then try again. Lou G says, "So the thing that was never going to happen happened." Yes, it did. But this channel will never, in fact, reach 21K. David Bergen says, "In response to, quote, why would anyone watch this channel? I watch our channel because you are a great teacher." Thank you. Your backlog of videos has helped so much with getting into the Western canon. Congrats on 20K. Question: I've watched hundreds of hours of your old videos and have heard you reference teaching at some point, but I haven't heard you talk about what or where you taught. Please tell, and do you think about formally teaching again? Well, it's been all over and in a number of different levels. There's only been a couple of times that it was an actual job. Most of the rest of the time it was just a friend or an acquaintance or a friend of a friend saying, "Can you do this?" at zero notice. I'm absolutely screwed with one particular element or other. Can you just take over, or can you do this for me? I've had that happen a number of times. I've actually had my travel expenses paid for people who said, I don't know anyone else I can ask to do this who wouldn't need a month's preparation time. Could you do it, please? It's only been a couple of times that it was actually a job. And the reason that my face scrunches up when I say the word job is the answer to your last question. I would never formally teach again. I mean, what would it be now? What would it be in 2025? In Oklahoma, in 2025, I have to teach my students that the 2020 election was stolen. In 2025 in Tennessee, I have to teach my students both sides of slavery. And cell phones and constant nicotine consumption. I mean Zins. I mean the little pouches. Constant, absolutely constant, and all of them. So if you're a parent, you think that your sunny, rosy-cheeked kid isn't a nicotine addict, you're nuts. Absolutely nuts. Now, a whole room full of drug addicts on their phones? No, I would never do it again. Never. Black Oak says, "Congratulations and thank you for the many hours of wonderful entertainment and valuable information." Thank you. My question: what's your favorite Nero Wolfe novel and why? Oh no, you can't. I'm not done with them. For those of you who don't know what Black Oak is asking, I am currently rereading all of Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe novels in order. And there's no way you can ask me now for a favorite. I'm not done. I'm not done with them at all. I didn't really think that I would read them all in order, but now I am going to. Now I'm fully committed. So I'm in the teens. There are bits and pieces from almost all of them that I really like. But I won't know a favorite novel until I'm done. Alex Quadros asks, which literary prize / distinction, if any, do you put the most stock in? None. Mike Reese says, what is the best meal you've ever had? Thanks for the channel. A single meal. Well, I'm not really a foodie, but I think it was probably 40 years ago, 45 years ago. I had a delicious, first of all, the meal was delicious. The appetizers, the main course was a gigantic slab of perfectly prepared swordfish steaks. Uh, the wine that went with it was great. The company was great. The restaurant knew me, and that was great because they gave me my proportions of food, my amount of food instead of a normal amount of food, which is wonderful when a restaurant knows you and does that. The company was wonderful, and also in the company was someone with whom I was in love, and the feeling was reciprocated. So it wasn't just the food. It was the meal. It was the whole thing. It was the getting there. It was the conversation. It was the laughter. It was that particular sickness of love. It was the indulgence of the staff to give this human being at this table full of human beings a horse's amount of food. It was the way the food was prepared, just everything. And the rest of the evening, after the meal. That's probably it. And I wouldn't do that now. I wouldn't eat swordfish steak now. But still, that probably counts. Little Felix says, "Hi, Steve. Congratulations on the thing that was never going to happen." Yes. Thank you for the channel. I'm curious, how do you speak to dogs? And what is your favorite fiction and nonfiction book about dogs? Well, I mean, speaking to dogs makes it sound like Dr. Dolittle. I understand how they communicate. Most of it is not verbal. I understand every single thing about how they communicate. And there is no language barrier between me and a dog. Unless the dog is crazy. I never need to ask a dog, why are you doing this? What do you want? What are you thinking? What are you going to do next? I never need to ask that because there's no language barrier. And dogs are always talking. The only time when I ever need to say, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Is if the dog is crazy. For 15 years, I had a crazy basset hound, for instance. There was never a single moment when I knew what my little Lucy was thinking, or why she was doing any of the things that she was doing. I never understood that at all, except she was in my arms and we were canoodling with each other. Then we understood each other, but that was rare. It happened every day. But most of the stuff she did during the day was just nuts. She would have long, serious, philosophical conversations with fire hydrants. She would bay at a stray leaf of grass. Ooh. She would stand at a bookcase full of books and start lowing like a cow because she was asking it for her supper, when that's not where your food is. You've known this for 10 years. But in terms of books, there's no fiction. But I always recommend Coulter by Rick Bass for nonfiction. It's pretty brutal, but it's really touching. Touch of CU says, what do you think of Balzac? I like his work. Andrew Russell says, you're obviously led a very rich and varied 28 years. Yes, it's been a raucous 28 years. What has been your most terrifying animal encounter? Most terrifying would probably equate to most helpless, I would think. For me, anyway. And for me, that is an elephant. An African elephant. You might think, I mean, I'm not dumb enough to swim in the ocean. You're completely helpless if you swim in the ocean, so you can get attacked by a shark. I'm not dumb enough to swim or even walk in a body of water that I don't know is crocodile free. If you're in Africa and you see a puddle in the road and you think, well, it just rained this morning, so it's okay to walk by that puddle. No, there's a 12-foot crocodile in that puddle. If you're looking at a body of water anywhere where there are crocodiles and you're wondering if there are crocodiles in it, the answer is yes. So I'm not dumb enough to do anything like that, so I'm not in danger from those things. But with an elephant, well, they can come to you, and you are completely helpless when encountering one. Completely. I always traveled with dogs, and they were off leash, and they were totally under my command. See the previous question about talking to dogs. They were totally under my command, which gave me a huge amount of leeway against most of the natural world. Most of the natural world will not face a coordinated dog pack. They know they'll lose. That's just the way it is. Two go in to bite at the nose or the lower jaw. You swipe at them. They pull away faster than you can swipe at them. Maybe you hurt one of them. But at the moment that you're swiping, two are going into your flank. You spin around to get at them. Two more go into another flank. Two more go into the nose again. And that happens endlessly. Especially if it's coordinated by one mind, you're going to lose. Unless you're an African elephant. I mean, for God's sake, if you're an African elephant, you're not going to lose. What is a dog pack to you? Nothing. Literally nothing. So when you're walking along a dirt road deep in the countryside in Africa, and you've got trees on either side, and then suddenly over the trees, an African elephant head appears. He has just smelled you. That's the most terrifying, because you can't outrun it, and you can't do anything about it. You just like being in an earthquake. That's happened a couple of times. I just got lucky, purely lucky. Same thing one time with a hippo. Hippos are pretty bad too, even on land. They're pretty bad too. I never got foolish enough to really have a terrifying encounter with a rhinoceros. There's one kind of rhinoceros that's much bigger than the others, and they're very bad tempered, and they're very very short fuse. But elephants can be anywhere, and it's amazing how they can materialize out of nowhere. Lots of others too, though. I mean, I've had most of the other encounters, like bears, for instance. Most of those, they have been terrifying theoretically, but it wasn't theory because I wasn't alone. I had a dog pack with me, and that made a difference. That actually made the difference. Alex Quadros says, "What novel have you most drastically changed your mind about, in either a positive or a negative direction, and why?" Apologies if this somewhat inevitable question is a repeat. I don't know that there have been drastic changes in my estimation of a novel, because for most of the time that I have been reading as a critic. And if I do say so myself, I'm a pretty good critic. Most of the time when I'm reading a book, very little gets by me. So when I'm done and it's time for me to decide what I think about a book, that decision is usually battered down pretty tight. I think a demonstration of this, I'm perfectly willing to stand by my critical acumen. I think a demonstration of this would be that my recommendations from 20 years ago still hold up. So I've changed my mind on novels sometimes. Works of nonfiction far more likely, but nothing drastic. Let's see here. The Booked Escape Plan asks, "Hey Steve, you've mentioned on more than one occasion expressing that you see yourself as someone who came late to reading. How late would you say reading really took off for you? Congratulations on 20K. I was pecking at it for a while. Once I realized that it was something I wanted to do, once I was convinced of that, I was pecking at it for a while before it took off, and then finally it did. And there's been no looking back. But I don't know. I was pecking at it probably for 6 months, and then the Iliad happened. There was no going back after that. Call Me Tomorrow says, "Hello Steve, congrats on 20K. Question: how many countries have you been to? Name them." Okay. Thanks for the congrats. Name them sounds like an order. This would be an odd thing for you to do to a stranger. but I have not been to Australia or New Zealand. But what about, no, I haven't been to Australia and New Zealand. So any country that you're thinking of that is not Australia or New Zealand, I have been to, including a dozen countries that don't exist anymore. Any of them. Any country you're thinking of that isn't those two. But what about, no. Any country that isn't those two, I have been to. TLC6829 asked, "Hi Steve, condolences." Yes, thank you. On reaching 20,000 subscribers. You deserve it, and you can take that any way you want. Okay. I always enjoy your videos, especially your bookshelf tours. I'd like to ask you what you think of Lynn Olson's books. Haven't they really done much for me? Also, did you like Davis Grubb's Night of the Hunter? Oh, yes. Yes, I did. Wish I had the vintage. I think, was it Vintage or Harper that did a really classy paperback reprint? I wish I had that. Vito says, "Congratulations on 20K, Steve. What would you say are the best crime fiction books? This includes police procedurals, detectives, private eye, heist, etc. you have read. Have you ever considered doing a starter kit for crime/espionage fiction?" I thought I did a starter kit for Dr. November just a couple of years ago. I could swear I did. for espionage fiction. I don't have a single favorite at all. Some of them do better than others. For me, there's not really a standout thing. I mean, some of John le Carré's best books, Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, some of those I think are just about as good as espionage fiction can get. But there are plenty of other people who do almost as good, or who do different things that le Carré doesn't do really well, like Eric Ambler. So I don't have a pantheon there, but I should do a starter kit if I haven't. I thought I had. Minia Petrinu says, just call me O'Brien. All right, okay, thank you. And 20,000 should have happened in 2016 already. This is so overdue. Is it really? Scrofulous old man who talks about books all day long? Thank you for continuing to surprise us after so long. Your read-alouds and critical commentary on first paragraphs were such good additions to the host of great old talks, from brattles to poetry rants. But to my question, you have told us on occasion you would not want to live during any past age, and spoke to us often about the silliness of fictional characters. Yet were you never seduced by any setting to which you'd be able to be there for even a little while? Say, hiking the Arc of Corinth with Alexius and Lysis during that one perfect afternoon. P.S. Troy War for our next read aloud. Okay, we're not going to read Troy War out loud. I want to stay on YouTube. But the Arc of Corinth, I have been there with beautiful young men. Why would I want fictional young men? Why would I want to do that? I have been to the Alhambra Palace with beautiful people and fun people and interesting people. I've done these things. Why would I want to go into a book and do it the way the book says? I have been swept away by fiction. Of course I have. But not that it's real. Anyway. Social Tubi says, SoCal Tubi says, you have mentioned that there was a key person in your life who introduced you to the world of books. Did you ever have an opportunity later in life to let that person know what a profound impact they made on your life? Yes. Yes, I did. In two ways. And how old were you when you encountered this person? I was way too old. I wish that I had encountered reading a lot earlier. I envy all of you who did, that you've been reading your whole lives. Whenever I hear that from somebody, a new booktuber or old, I'm just green with envy. How wonderful that would be. Daniel's Bibliophagy says, what would your approach be if you were wholly in charge of the education of a youth? Okay. All right, well, we're all friends here. I am assuming that you are simply biased. Here, I have been wholly in charge of the education of many, many, many youths. many, many of them, but they weren't human, and I'm sure you mean human here. And I wouldn't do it. I don't have that kind of courage. All of you who are bringing up human children, my hat's off to you. I'm not that brave. I wouldn't dream of it. I wouldn't know where to even begin. Ms. Phi Reed says, thank you, Steve. I just want you to know you're appreciated. Well, isn't that nice? Random person says, congrats on 20K, Steve. My question is a simple one. How many reviews approximately do you write in a day? I have a rough estimate of how much you read based on what you've said in the past, but I'm just as interested to know how much you write, at least in terms of reviews. Well, I write at least one review every day for the American trade journals. Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus. At least one of those every day. For a long time, for 15 years. So that's a lot. But they aren't long, and they aren't difficult. And they don't involve any artistry. They do involve an artistry. They have a set program. So this part, the front part for the summary, the back part for the review, and the review it can't be impressionistic. It has to be, these are things the book does well, these are things the book does poorly, and I can show it, I can give page quotes. They're not the same thing as a personal review, but there is artistry involved. And I do one of those every day. But I also do lots of others. It's not usually one every day, and it should be. It should be. I should be writing a trade journal review, a Steve Reads entry, and an Open Letters review every day. I should be doing those three things every day. In addition to fiction, in addition to any commissioned work elsewhere, I should be doing those three things every day. I don't really have a reason why I do. I always come up with a reason. You know this perfectly well because you all do the same thing. Only you don't have the fallback of still being productive. I am still freakishly productive. You aren't, because you come up with so many excuses. But you come up with excuses. The dog's not feeling well. You're not feeling well. You've got guest coming over or a meter reader coming over or something. You always come up with an excuse, but there's no excuse. Considering how much time I have on the clock, so much more than you do, I should be doing those 3 things every day. Let's see here. Fruit Jelly says, thank you for making your channel. You're welcome. Believe me, I'm getting more than I give. Nick Piccarilli says, is there a historical figure you would most like to see get a Wolf Hall type book? Well, I don't know if Nick Piccarilli has read Wolf Hall, but the point here that I want to make, that I think he's alluding to, is that Wolf Hall isn't just ordinary historical fiction. It's a lot more than that. It is so much more than that. And I wouldn't have picked Thomas Cromwell as the object of that kind of historical fiction treatment. I've never seen that kind of historical fiction treatment before. I wouldn't have picked Thomas Cromwell, and I love those books. So anybody, just as long as you can do it convincingly, then anybody. Guttridge says, Steve, thank you for being you. Who else would want to be me? My roommate and I watch a couple of Steve videos every night, and I've bought over a dozen books on your recommendation. Wow. Arcane question. Spiro T. Agnew's novel, The Canfield Decision, exists, but I have a hard time believing that putty-nosed goon that putty-nosed goon actually wrote a book. Can you identify the ghostwriter or your prime suspect for that position? Thank you for your time. Putty-nosed goon. I'm going to have to use that in the next biography of Spiro Agnew. I don't believe that he wrote it. No, but I don't have any suspects. He could have. It's not all that good, so he could have. James asks, congrats, Steve. Thanks for all your videos. You become my treadmill companion every weekday morning. So many questions I could ask. Hard to pick just one. Can you recommend a few lesser-known World War II novels or series, i.e. more obscure than the usual First, Griffin, Ben, McInnes? You're all putting parameters on my answers. P.S. Would love to see a revisit to the starter kit videos. I have a ton of ideas for starter kits. I just don't seem to get them off the ground. But in terms of World War II fiction, you don't mention Douglas Riemann. And if you haven't read him, you really should. He's really, really good. You also don't mention Nicholas Montserrat's novel, The Cruel Sea, which is not a series. It's a standalone book, but it's one of, if I were to pick 10 great World War II novels, that would be one of them, maybe the best of them. So, The Cruel Sea is very much worth your time. Oh, my God. Brebo says, congrats on 20K. I'm visiting Boston for the first time in a few weeks. Other than a Brattle visit, do you have any must-do recommendations for first-time Boston visitors? Well, you must, of course, meet me at the Brattle. I hope you're going to do that. We're going to meet at the Brattle. But in addition to that, you probably want to walk around Boston Common. You probably want to walk around the Public Gardens, which is right across the street from Boston Common. You definitely want to do, if you have the time, you definitely want to do the art museums. And fortunately, the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts, is, again, less than a block away from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which is a very different kind of museum. The MFA is the kind of art museum you find in every bigger city. It's got its major art paintings. They're all well designed. It's wide open, plenty of glass walls. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is the type of museum that you will also find in a lot of cities, like the Frick in New York, where it's a house, it's a building. And the building itself, even if it had no artwork in it, you would still want to tour it. And it's a completely different experience than the MFA, but it is wonderfully complementary to the MFA. You've got to do the Gardner Museum. Just got it. You've got to do both. And they're so close to each other that you really don't have any excuse. So you could do those two things. Depending on how much time you have here, you might want to go on a whale watch. There's an experience you'll remember for the rest of your life, especially if you come from a landlocked area. Just go to the New England Aquarium. I think they still have whale watches going out of there every day during the summer. Let's see here. Pink Roquette. Do you enjoy doing crossword puzzles? And if so, do you have any favorite constructors? I don't. I've never caught the crossword puzzle bug. R.J. Malcolm says, what is your favorite Australian novel / author? Have novels in Australia? Who knew? What on earth? I don't think I have a favorite. Patrick says, Steve, you're stranded on a desert island and you're bookless. Oh my God. Oh my God. A plane at high altitude carrying crates of books passes over and one crate falls off and lands on your island. It was only carrying separate crates with the collected works of Hemingway, Joyce, or McCarthy. I'm assuming you mean Cormac McCarthy and not Mary McCarthy. As you pry the crate open, which do you hope to see? Joyce, probably, because I'd want as much Kindle for firing and toilet paper as possible. So I'd want the person with the most page. Maybe that would be Hemingway. I'd want the highest page count, definitely. Dorota says, thank you. You're welcome. Elijah says, congrats, Steve. Firstly, have you considered, and I realize that framing my question in this way probably doesn't hide the fact that it really is, this is a subtle request, teaching any works on your channel? Well, according to some people who've asked questions, I already do that. Would love to hear you analyze Aeschylus's Oresteia, for instance. Don't you have Benjamin McAvoy for that? You have plenty of soft-voiced dude bro grifters who teach books all the time on BookTube. Secondly, what are your thoughts on the use of dialect in writing, such as the use of Scots dialect in Burns's poetry or Irvine Welsh's Trainspotting? I hate it. I hate dialect in anything, from Twain all the way down. I hate dialect in anything. I've never seen the point of it at all. It's not a question of how people are sounding. It's a question of how you're hearing them, and that changes from person to person. I've never seen the point of it at all. Phil Theo says, congrats on reaching another milestone, Steve. Just curious if you are able to read any non-English books in their original languages. Yeah, one or two. For example, I think you have mentioned you learned classical Latin, or was it Greek? It was both. When you were a boy. I didn't mention that I learned it when I was a boy. But not sure if you have kept up with these languages or other languages so that you are able to read Virgil or Cicero or Homer or others. I have kept up with those languages and other languages. It doesn't feel that way. I don't think that most speakers of English think they're keeping up with English. It's not a schoolbook exercise for me. But I understand what you mean, and I do. Yes, the answer is yes. Scott Pearson says, I am 3 years into reading a short story every day. I have found in science fiction a trend where authors will write a short story which later becomes part of a longer work. My experience has been mainly with science fiction writing, and I was curious if this trend has always been in science fiction and whether it extends to other genres as well. Well, I'm more familiar. I'm sure it does extend to other genres, but I'm more familiar with it in science fiction, of course. You see it all the time. You'll see someone do a short story, Bears Discover Fire, or something like that. You'll see someone, or Dragonflight. You'll see someone do a short story, and it takes off. It's really popular. And science fiction authors will, when you get them on a panel with free drinks, they'll go on and on about how I felt the muse calling. I felt there was more story to be told. The characters said, "Let us free," but really, it's just money. It's just the story did well. It resonated with fans. So your agent thought, you can make this book and get more money. And that happens in science. I don't know if it still does, but the science fiction back catalog is full of examples of that. Just full of it. You find an older science fiction novel, you should hunt around to see what the original short story was, because there almost certainly will be one. Tim says, congratulations, and a question mark. Steve, yes. What are a few books like Gone with the Wind or The Three Musketeers that have those books' same narrative magic, where you just can't put the book down because the prose is so absorbing? And the unspoken, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but the unspoken part of that is you can't put the book down because the prose is so absorbing, even though it's maybe not all that good. I don't know if you thought that, but I often do. That's how I isolate this particular magic that we're talking about, because it's undeniable that it exists. And sometimes it exists in books where the story is a potboiler and the prose is not all that good. Like, for instance, I would nominate 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, absolutely, as another example of that. But also Kathleen Windsor's book Forever Amber, which is not in print anymore, as far as I know, is the same way. I don't believe you will stop reading it. I don't believe you will. Griffonsi asks, hey Steve, I wanted to know about your sleep routine. How often you sleep and for how long, as well as about your diet. Do you prepare meals for yourself throughout the day, or do you order delivery? How's your sleep schedule and diet changed over the course of your life? Well, hey baby, you stealing the show? How you doing? How's my little mouse? I sleep very little. Very, very little. Usually under 2 hours a night. Under normal circumstances, usually it's that. And I can postpone that a lot. I can go nights without. It's come in very handy with sick dogs. And it's never much longer than that. If I've had a lot of wine, then I will do that gratefully. Usually even that time is grudging. I hate sleep. I just hate it. I don't know why all of you love it. It's so terrifying and such a waste of time. So obviously, I mean, physically, it's not a waste of time. Your body needs it. I'm only being facetious here. If you're normally wired for sleep, there are only a handful of people, according to the All Neurology Lab at Mass General, there are only a handful of people who are not normally wired. If you're normally wired for 8 to 10 hours of sleep, you should definitely get that. You will undergo severe physical deficiencies if you don't. But in terms of eating, that varies. I don't pre-make food, and I try. There's a place right next door. They're all wonderful. They're really friendly. It's basically a fry shop. They have a wide menu. Anyone who's ever been a guest here will tell you their food is really good. It's generous portions, and it's tempting. They're right there, but usually, when I'm by myself and it's just me and the bean, and there are no guests here, there's nothing like that, I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on it. I really don't. I just there's a Trader Joe's bags of vegetable fried rice. Really easy. You open the bag, you put half of it in a pan on the stove, and just stir it around at low heat until everything looks good, until all the stuff has lost the sheen of being frozen, until everything is soft that should be soft, and then you're done. And that's a whole meal. It's so low stress, it's so easy to do, that or pop some potatoes in the air fryer or something like that. I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on it, is what I'm going to say. I eat like a drover's horse when I have company, when it's a special occasion. But when I'm by myself, I'm mostly reading. I'm mostly not thinking about eating. The key thing is, for me, is not to think about eating, but to think about drinking. You should stay hydrated at all times. Those of you who have heard Randy Ray say this over and over again, he's actually been hospitalized for dehydration. It's very important. Stay hydrated. And what I mean by that is well hydrated. If you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So I make a point of keeping up with that, but not eating. Not when I'm by myself, when there's nobody within 5 miles. No, I don't bother. I just read. And it hasn't changed throughout the course of my life, no. Black Oak says, why do you dislike the writing of Stephen King? It stinks. It's really terrible. It's easy. It's lazy. It's choked with cliches. It's poorly structured. It's self-referential. It's navel-gazing. It's just grandiose. It's tinny. It just stinks. It stinks on every level. There's no way in which it's good. It's amazing to me. You'd think after 50 years of constantly writing, something would have crept in, but there's no way, no element in which his writing is any good. Okay, I can't even read this next name. Congratulations, Steve. What role do you believe writing/book critics have for the reading public? None. What value should book critics provide to the reading public? Thank you. Love your channel. Well, critics should provide to the reading public advance notice. We are advanced scouts. Used to be. Used to be that we were advanced scouts. Someone like me, someone in my position, or for instance, Sam Sachs at the Wall Street Journal, who does their fiction chronicle. The only thing he reads is contemporary fiction, the new fiction that's coming out, contemporary and reprints of fiction. That's all he reads, and he reads it better than anybody who's currently alive, and he reads it in advance of everybody. He gets advance copies, like I do, like you see me do in the mail. Someone like him, someone like me, we are out. It used to be that professional book critics were out there ahead of time, seeing all this stuff and spending lots of time on it, under the explicit assumption that you don't have that kind of time. Not that we're better, but that we're out there ahead of you, and maybe more skilled at picking, the balls and strays. Maybe you develop a skill if you do something long enough. Except Stephen King, you develop a skill. So that is the value of a critic, is that they're out there ahead of time, saying these 10 books are coming down the pike to you. And even if you don't have, even if you don't have the money to buy any of them, so that still doesn't let you off the hook, because you're still wondering what you should order from the library. These 10 books are coming down the pike. There's a 1,000-page book on World War II. There's a 1,000-page book on World War I. There's a 1,000-page novel about an auto factory in Pittsburgh. There's a 200-page debut novel about siblings in Oklahoma at the turn of the 20th century. There's a new study of a poet. It's not a biography, it's a study of his work. There's these 10 books coming towards you. Well, without critics who are dedicated to doing that kind of advanced work, you're stuck. You're on your own. And if you pick one on your, I'm not saying that you're a blind little lamb that needs guiding, but if you pick one of those on your own and you pick wrong, you've wasted your time. And most people who are not professional critics have very little time to waste. It amazes me that all of you do what you do anyway. That you all have jobs, sometimes more than one job. You have children, you have classes, and just all kinds of obligations, and yet you make time to read. Well, I value that time of yours. I really value that time. You have so little of it, and there's so few readers in the world, that my job as a critic is to sift through all this stuff that's coming and let you know what might be worth your time. And I do that in two ways. One, by telling you about it, and two, by telling you what I think of it. And the reason the first part is important is because you might not care about the second part. Or you might care about the second part but think, I do care what Steve thinks about a book, but often he has said that he didn't like it, but his description of it in the first part made me want to try it on my own, and I ended up liking it, even though he didn't. That's happened often. And that is still a service. Unfortunately, that is largely gone. Most people don't have a particular book critic that they like anymore. Once upon a time you did, but most people don't read anymore. So the furthest that most people will go is just to see how a book is rated on Goodreads with stars. They don't even read the reviews. They just look at the stars on Goodreads or Amazon. Horrifying. Something JW says, congratulations on 20K. Can't wait to get a Steve Donahue Blinkist discount code. No one approaches me for sponsorships. These horrible brainless things that like BetterHelp or Blinkist, they don't approach me. They've approached channels smaller than mine, but they don't approach me. I don't know why. One of you suggested years ago, it's just maybe they don't approach you because they've actually watched some of your videos and they know that you'll mock them. You'll not only turn them down, but you'll mock them. Maybe they don't want that. My question, what do you think of George Orwell? And what's your favorite piece of writing by him? I like the big collected essays, the 4-volume collected essays. I'm not a big fan of his fiction. I like it, some of it, but I much prefer his nonfiction. And what do I think of him is a great question. It's a complicated question. David Murphy and I were talking about this just recently, both in email and then when he visited. We were talking about how strange guys react to Orwell. How odd a reaction. He provokes a reaction in them that is not literary. And neither one of us has got to the bottom of what it is. You can see the gear shift when you bring up Orwell to a guy who reads. You can see the gear shift. And David doesn't understand it any more than I do, because it doesn't happen with him and it doesn't happen with me. And if it doesn't happen with you, you're not going to understand it at all. He writes very good essays. But so does V.S. Pritchett, and no one does that. Orwell. I don't know what it is. It's he's not completely dude, bro. He's too smart for that. I don't know what it is, but my thoughts of him are just he's a very talented writer. I know that's very anticlimactic, and the reason it's anticlimactic is because that reaction exists. People always think, Orwell. So there's something different, right? There's Evelyn Waugh, and there's George Orwell, and there's I don't even know, C.P. Snow. You pick, or Anthony Burgess. You pick these contemporaries, rough contemporaries, and with Orwell it'll be Orwell. I don't get that at all. Michael Sokor says, "Where did you live in England and why?" Well, I didn't live anywhere in England. I guess I had a kind of a home base, and that was in Leeds. But I spent very little. I spent a lot of time in Leeds. I went all over the place. But I used that as a home base, as I mentioned, to just go everywhere. Where can I go? Day trip, walking. Oh my God, an endless amount of walking. 200, 300 miles. Just endless amounts of walking with my dogs all over the English countryside. With Leeds as a place that I could go back to if I couldn't find some place to stay. And then people. With cars or lorries or whatnot, where are you going? Where are you going? You're going down to the South Shore? I'll go. We'll gladly go with you. But it was everywhere. I ended up being everywhere, but I never stayed anywhere. That was not one of the dozen places where I stayed. I never did that in London or anywhere else. Let's see here. Marsha Johnson says, how did you end up meeting with other booktubers like David or Hannah in person? You all seem to connect so wonderfully. Well, I don't know about, I can't speak for them, but for me, it's enthusiastic inviting. I want everybody to come here for Wine and Calzones, or at least to meet me at the Brattle. I shouldn't say I want everybody to come here for Wine and Calzones, because let's be honest, some people are not good company. I don't like that. I especially scorn it because it's obviously voluntary. No one's naturally bad company. Some people have just codified. They're just bad company. They're full of dude bro conversation stoppers. They've got horrible physical habits, so you can't have them in the same room. They've got to be leaving every 15 minutes to take drugs or whatnot. They drone. They're intentionally monochrome and boring, and no one's ever called them on that or something. Or they're intentionally monochrome and boring because they think they've got eternity on the other side of the grave. They don't. This is it. This is the only time you have. Some people you can just sense that. I can just sense that it wouldn't work to be here for Wine and Calzones. But if I sense that they would be great company, then I ask. I don't know how anybody else does it. Laxwana says, hi, I'm new here. Listening to you is spellbinding. Why, thank you. I think. Poondog says, I'm trying to understand why people like Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain so much. I really want to read it one day, but it seems kind of daunting. Why do you love it? Well, I love it because it's as someone said about Virginia Woolf, or as Virginia Woolf said about Middlemarch, it's a novel for adults. It's a novel for grown-ups. It's a novel that doesn't do a lot of the junk that I hate novels for doing. But why I love it will be different from how you love it. You shouldn't be collecting opinions on why other people love it. None of those opinions will apply to you. You should read it and see if you do, or at least start it. Give it 100 pages and see what kind of reaction it's provoking in you. Wolf says, what is something about BookTube that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started this channel? Actually, again, it's going to sound sappy, but I wish I'd known how much fun this was. I knew that it would be fun, but I thought it would be fun in a kind of distant way, a 2 arms removed way. I would make videos, I would watch videos, I would comment on videos. Instead of just watching videos and commenting on them, I would do all 3. And maybe there'd be a tag video and I could participate in the tag. I wouldn't be tagged, but I could participate in the tag myself, and that would feel like an element of community. And for a lot of people, it does. For a lot of people, that is the extent of BookTube. But I had no idea how much better it could be. No idea how much more fun it could be. In other words, I had no idea that I would find a group of people who would share my sense of humor. That's incredibly rare. And it never occurred to me. It occurred to me I might find 1 or 2, but not a whole community that gets my sense of humor. That was just, if I could go back and tell myself, oh my God, if you're on the fence, do this, because this is coming to you and you don't know that. Oh, I would, definitely. Mom Horse says, do you have a favorite book about horses or a favorite artist of horses? No. When I was little, I loved King of the Wind. Yeah, King of the Wind is really good. Illustrated by Wesley Dennis. I don't think I ever saw it illustrated. Please, could you recommend a couple more horse books other than Down the Long Hills or For June on the Range? Well, I know I can't. Horses and I don't get along very well. Even when I've been riding them, they don't tend to like me, mainly because that usually involved 15 dogs running around their ankles, and they don't like that. I mean, I read and reviewed and loved a book called The Perfect Horse about the Lipizaners and how close they came to being killed by the Nazis. I read and reviewed that for the Christian Science Monitor and really liked it. But I don't know horse literature at all, and I don't read horse books for June on the Range. God help us, if it's anything, it's the opposite. Horses are treated even worse than women in westerns. It's grueling to think about. No, I don't really have any horse recommendations. No. Fyodor Dostoevsky says, do you happen to have any good French Revolution history recommendations? Well, yeah, quite a few, but The World of the French Revolution by R.R. Palmer is great. I don't know if it's still in print, probably not, but it's really, really good. And if so, does your recommendation more so reflect or inform your own take on the event? Okay, I don't understand the question. And my own rules were that if I don't understand the question, I'm not going to take a flyer on it. I don't know what that means. It seems like you're implying that I lived through the French Revolution, so I had that plus books. Yeah, I don't know what that means. So I'm just going to move on. Marcelo is here. Congratulations, Steve. Question: I am tempted to read Seven Pillars of Wisdom. Why do you love the book? And what kind of people do you think would like it? No, again, just like with Magic Mountain, you shouldn't be polling ahead of time to read a book. Just pick it up and read it. I'll happily send you the ebook. Just pick it up and read it yourself. My reasons why I loved it are not going to be your reasons. Almost certainly they aren't. This is 2 times that this has cropped up. You should not be polling people to find out why you are going to like a book. It's not going to apply to you. If you read 100 pages and it doesn't work for you, okay, fine. Don't hard DNF it. Definitely give it a chance in 10 years. But my reasons are irrelevant when it comes to that. Flora should be reading. Says, here's to 25K. This channel will never, in fact, reach 25K. I have 2 questions. Number 1, what is your favorite literary biography? And number 2, what do you think of Marot's novels on Byron and Shelley? I'm tempted to read them, but of course I want to have the Steve stamp of approval. You could read them, definitely. They're worth it. But in terms of favorite literary biography, I guess I'm contractually obliged to say Boswell's Life of Johnson here, but I don't know that many people would classify it as that. Nancy Milford's book, Savage Beauty, her life of Edna St. Vincent Millay is great. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's great. Books for Eric says, I love your Daily Penguin series. Would you consider doing a Daily Norton critical edition, or one for your Everyman Library books, Library of America? Oh, even the Daily Penguin series is sputtering. Well, I don't know that new ones would work. Dead Poet says, one major advice that you want to give to young readers who want to read more like you. Why would a young reader want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to read like yourself? Unless you mean more like me, I guess is the question. It's so vague. What about me? If you want to read critically, okay, well then you have to take a step back from the book. You can't read it with your lymph nodes anymore. That's a decision on your part. If you want to read steadily, so you get a lot of reading done, well, you have to make those decisions. You have to decide to prioritize reading. You can't just say, I want to read more and then not do it. But in terms of, if you mean read like me in terms of what I read, why would anybody want to imitate some other reader? The only advice I would give would be for the pragmatic stuff that I just mentioned. If you want to read more critically, well, you have to practice and do that. It's a muscle, like anything else. If you want to read more, you have to devote more time to it. It has to be a priority. It's not going to happen on its own, etc. Caden says, hey, Steve, I'm a new subscriber to your channel of 2020 as of 2025. Good Lord. My question is, had Dostoevsky lived long enough to complete it, do you think there needed to be a sequel to the Brothers Karamazov? Minus the bloated philosophical discussions throughout it, I feel like the story ends on its own without a need for revisiting. Thanks in advance and congrats on 20K. No, there need be no sequel to Brothers K. Ryan Lisbon says, congrats on the milestone. You're a national treasure. I hate to live in that nation. Have you encountered any great novels so far in 2025? I have. Published May 20th, The Doorman by Chris Pavone. Published June 3rd, Don't Forget Me, Little Bessie, James Lee Burke. Published June 17th, Fox by Joyce Carol Oates. Published September 9th, The Elements by John Boyne. Maybe the key to writing a stellar book in your 80s is to have 3 names. John Irving's 83 upcoming work, Queen Esther, is an overwritten encyclopedic bore, but JCO and Burke are penning at the top of their game. Your thoughts? You very, very clearly don't want my thoughts. You want instead to say your thoughts. Have you encountered any great novels so far in 2025? I have. Okay, all right, good to know. Lucy Ledbetter says, do you have any siblings? If so, are they similarly bookish? I'd love to hear more about your education, too. Thanks very much, Steve. I do have siblings. I have no idea if they're bookish. Tracy says, what languages do you read? I read the normal smattering of Romance languages, plus a couple of dead ones. Grix is here. Which part of Africa was your favorite? I'm duty-bound to say Namibia. And your least favorite? That would be the Congo. I'm loving John Reader's book, by the way, and Africa, too. Oh, my darling. Grix, are you in Africa? I swear we never know where you are from one minute to the next. Rasmus says, what's your favorite thing about the 21st century so far? Uh, I assume you mean about the century and not just my personal life, so I don't mention Frida. The internet, hands down. Roomham says, how strong is the chance we'll be reading Odd Dog in a few years? Odd Dog would be a very long book. Take a long time to write. I believe 20K subscribers directly translates to 20K $50 hardback book sales. Pah! No, it doesn't. 20,000 subscribers translates to about 10 hardcover book sales at any price. $1 translates to about 10. AKA says, congrats on the impossible milestone, Steve. What do you think of Craven's Last Hunt and the Web of Spider-Man period? I was thinking of reading them. I don't know about the whole Web of Spider-Man period, but Craven's Last Hunt is obviously good. I mean, you tell that when you were reading it issue by issue. This is something special. The only thing is, of course it's something special if you're playing for keeps, but it's comic books, so you can't play for keeps. It would be really special if it had been final, but it wasn't. So, and have you ever seen an orca hunt? No, thank God. Thanks for the wonderful videos. Well, thank you. Patrick says, if there were a Bizarro Steve, a Dave Stonahue, as it were, he'd be a cat-loving, motorcycle-riding, teetotaling dude, bro. Not a question, just a comment. Honestly Not a Weirdo says, hello, Mr. Donahue, and congratulations on your channel's success. I enjoy it so much I've decided to watch all 8,000 of your videos chronologically. I am up to number 17. Well, good luck for the next 6 years. Anyway, my question is this. What is your favorite large mammal bigger than a sheep? And are there any large mammals you are not fond of at all? Thank you for your time. Probably my favorite large mammal larger than a sheep would be a cow. It seems like a dumb answer, but cows are actually wonderful people. They're usually gentle. They're usually very goofy, full of a sense of humor. Probably that. And as in terms of larger mammals I'm not fond of at all, well, a few come to mind. Bears, for instance, and also moose come to mind. I'm not fond of either one of them. Daniel says, hi Steve, congrats on reaching 20K subscribers. My question, what is your opinion on the Classics Illustrated comic books? Did you enjoy reading them? I love them. Yeah, just love them. I didn't read them as a kid, but I love them. Peyton Reviews says, are you going to create a creative writing group this summer? Oh my, a creative writing group. It's another thing, like a few other things that have cropped up in this Q&A that I keep meaning to do. We should have a creative writing group. I got stymied by the way it would happen. And because I was stymied by the way it was happening, I said, all right, well, until we figure it out, just use my email. And I got bombarded with stuff. People sending me whole manuscripts, 100,000 page manuscripts. And also, and that, of course, is totally impossible. But in addition to that, it was the letters that accompanied them. So incredibly condescending. So incredibly self-absorbed. So many of them. It just did not work. It absolutely, making my inbox a clearinghouse does not work. For whatever kind of creative writing group we're going to do, that certainly does not work. I just have not, somebody suggested a subreddit or a Discord group, and I never revisited it. I was so repulsed by that. I was so overwhelmed and repulsed by getting all that stuff in my email that I have not revisited, and I should. Because there is an interest. Monet Doyle is here. What is the latest romance book you've read? Do you have a favorite romance author? I don't have a single favorite romance author, no. And the latest romance book that I read was by Kristen Proby. It's called When We Break. I think it was suggested to me by Kindle Unlimited. It's a contemporary small-town Western romance in which the woman is coming to the small town from the big city. She is recovering from a dance injury, but she's also running from someone. She's running from a maniac stalker. And the hero is in town. He is smitten with her right away. But the smitten isn't the only part of the book. He actually becomes more interesting once he realizes that he can actually be of use to her. Which is it's not really discussed in the book as much as I wish it had been. That it isn't just love at first sight. It isn't just, oh my, you have long raven red hair. It was more than that. Once they realized that they could do things for each other, their romance really complicated, and I like that. It was called When We Break. I don't know if it's part of a series or not. Patrick says, congratulations, Steve, is the Helen Keller story, as it has been presented over the last 75 years, too fantastic to be true? No. No. What do you mean? Do you think she's faking it? No. I think it's totally true. DZGIN says, that person with 111 questions is the same person that appears at your Windows Michael Myers style. It's referring to a Steve stream where someone just fired off one question after another. They weren't even taking time to read the answers. They were literally spamming with questions, although they were not a bot. They were literally... They were an adult who was not exercising any self-control, and that always annoys me. It's how we are where we are now, because adults feel like they can do that. And the internet helps them to feel that way. Tomorrow's Classics says, congratulations, Steve. Which biography of George VI gets the Steve stamp of approval? Well, the Sarah Bradford one is, I think, kind of the standard one, and it's very good. But I would also recommend The Last Emperor by Pete Townsend. Not the Who's Pete Townsend, I don't think. That would be mighty impressive. No, he did a study of the king as emperor, but it's also really good as a biography. Really, really readable. No idea. Sarah Bradford's book, I'm assuming, is still in print. But the Peter Townsend book might not be. Indie ATM something or other says, are you a fan of Rex Pickett's Sideways novels? A fan of the film? I am a fan of the film. I've never read the novels. Are they good? Are they worth a try? Book Supreme says, where is your favorite place to read outdoors? Don't ever lose that sense of humor. Indie ATM says, given the very understandable wariness of new superhero product, which so far looks least bad to you? The FF film, or Superman, and why? Do you see any potential positives with either? I am assuming, I mean, how many times does Lucy have to pull the football away from Charlie Brown before he gets the hint? I'm assuming Fantastic Four will stink. And I'm assuming largely that Superman will too. Hollywood does not... Hollywood... right, I'm going to risk sounding like, neurotic or whatever, the neck-bearded quasi-fascist on YouTube. But it's nevertheless true, and it's also written into their bylaws. It's something you can actually read. You don't have to... It's not an opinion. Hollywood is terminally woke. It's part of the business product now. They require studios, you need this many of this, you need this many of this, or we won't run your movie. We won't finance it. So, as long as that is true, your products are going to be inherently flawed. They are inherently going to shriek and lecture. They are inherently going to misrepresent the world. They are inherently going to value things that ordinary people don't care about at all. So I am operating under the assumption that Fantastic Four will stink and that Superman will largely stink too. But the Superman movie has Krypto, the Superdog. So there's definitely a positive there. Unless they kill Krypto, the Superdog. But I'm hoping they don't. Jack Walter says, which Shakespeare plays have you seen live and which ones were your favorites? I've seen every Shakespeare play live, more than once. And favorites isn't going to help any. I mean, unless you're asking just me personally. Favorites is always a question of the magic of the night, the magic of the ensemble. It's not reproducible. It's not even predictable. And I have favorites like that. Performances that I've seen where nothing, you couldn't do it again. In terms of the plays that are being performed, which of them? Well, I think that theatrically, Hamlet is actually the most effective play. Maybe Macbeth, but Macbeth sort of falls apart. At the end, it falls apart with Lady Macbeth, I think. But Hamlet doesn't do that. So, but I don't think you're talking about structurally. I think you're talking about my experiences. I've had lots of them, too many to name, but they weren't, a run or something like that. It was the particular magic of one particular set of non-duplicatable circumstances. Aaron Facer's here. Wow, 20K. I suppose we all have our cross to bear. Here's a random question. What would be worse for you to hear? A have you read question or condescending dog advice? Would depend on the setting. when I get a have you read question out in the world, like if I'm just chatting with a neighbor, as I'm prone to do since I'm a chatty old man, I guess from what I gather from the new people who've been here a year in the neighborhood, I guess I am the neighborhood's chatty old man. I don't think there are any others. But if I'm chatting with someone just out on the street, and they say, "Oh, have you read whatever?" I don't feel even the twinge of anger about that. Not at all. It's the setting. It's on BookTube. When I've done 8,000 books and talked about a million books on this channel, and somebody comes along and says, "Have you ever read David McCullough's biography of John Adams?" It's the setting that makes that irritating, not the question itself. And the same thing with condescending dog advice. If like for instance, well, again, on this channel, I talk about dogs all the time. I'm rather fond of dogs. They are rather fond of me. We get along really well. I know everything about dogs. I know how to put one apart and put it back together blindfolded. So if you know that in this setting and you give me condescending dog advice, of course it's gonna rub me the wrong way. Same thing, not medically speaking, but behaviorally speaking, the same thing when I'm out on a dog walk or I'm just walking on the sidewalk and I walk up to someone's dog and I squat down and I smush my face against theirs and I'm rubbing my face against theirs. They're wagging their whole body and they're licking my face off. And while they're doing that, their sententious owner is saying, you really should hand your hand like this and let them sniff to get used to you. You really shouldn't approach a dog that way. And let me tell you why, little Timmy, because they're very scent oriented and they'll go on and on like that, watching me elicit a better response from their dog than they ever have. like those questions have been asked and answered. Why are you ignoring what you're looking at in order to condescend to someone? So neither one is categorically worse. It depends on where. Traumatic Tomes is here. I love your channel. Steve, congrats on 20, and sorry to have missed you in Boston. I've had a lingering question while watching some of your little library tours. What do you mean when you say I go back to this book often? Does that constitute a reread or going through specific parts of the book or just shoring up forgotten knowledge or something else? It's all of those, and it is something else. I don't know quite how to put my finger on it. I should do a Steve Reads entry about it and try and figure it out in print. But a lot of you will have the same feeling. There are touchstone books. Maybe there's a bit of it that I want to research, or maybe there's a bit that I just want to relive. Maybe there's a bit of knowledge there, but it's not knowledge, just knowledge. It's not just that. It's not just utilitarian. Maybe it's a reread. That happens more often than not. I am more prone to reread book X than book Y, and so I go back to it more often. It's really kind of interesting that it doesn't really so much matter what subject the book is on. I will still go back and use it somehow, or consult with it somehow, even if I'm writing about something that has nothing to do with it. That's an ill-defined answer to your question. Sorry about that, but I should think about this because I suspect I'm not the only reader who feels that way. Westfield Space Agency says, "Hi, Steve. Congrats on 20K. I believe you mentioned that you used to teach literature. At what level did you teach? College, high school? College and high school." At some point or other, college or high school. Vice English says, "I find it odd that you rarely recommend memoirs, considering your fondness for biographies. Could you please recommend a memoir you really liked other than Eric by Doris Lund, Stop Time by Frank Conroy, and Ingratitude by Jenny Diskey?" Boy, this has been a trend in these Q&As, all of you telling me what my answers are. Not so bad as the one before saying, "Have you ever read any great novels yet in 2025? I have. I will determine what's a great novel in 2025. Not you, not anybody else. Okay? As long as we're clear on that. I mean, you could tell me the books you've liked so far in 2025, but I don't need you to tell me what's a great novel. I know what's a great novel, and I know better than most people do. Anyway, well, I guess I have to ask your permission. What memoirs am I allowed to mention here? So, you've discovered all of those thanks to me, and you like them. Lenny Goodings, A Bite of the Apple, about Virago Press. Her years at Virago Press. That it's not actually a biography. It's much more a memoir of her time entering the very sexist world of book publishing in the UK decades ago, and subtly changing it. She doesn't take all the credit. Doesn't even take most of the credit. I think a lot of credit's owed to her, and people like her that decided, No, this doesn't have to be this way. No, this doesn't have to be this way. Why on earth? Her book, Bite of the Apple, is terrific. Absolutely terrific. Or maybe Finnegan's book, Barbarian Days, about surfing. That's not really a biography. It's really a memoir. It's really, really good. Oh, God, there'd be a long list. Ben Bell says, did you like either of the recent books about Dutch art, Thunderclap or The Upside Down World? I didn't like Thunderclap much at all, and I like parts of The Upside Down World. Both of them seem to me to be suffering from the same kind of, look at me, Ma, I'm really clever. When, if you're talking about great Dutch art, you should be humble. It should have the spotlight. I have an interruption coming here. Vito says, do you agree with Harold Bloom's Western canon list? Was it the sort of thing you agree or disagree with? I mean, 90% of it, anybody would agree with. 90% of it is just a canon. But then he goes on to, great works from regional literature or country by country or stuff like that. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of disagreement there. And him with himself, too, because he recommended a lot of books in that aspect of Western canon that he hadn't read. So I agree with the bulk of it. There's room for argument, of course. Elena Macrodina is here. Concerning dead Romans, who are your favorites and why, apart from Catullus? Again, with the people telling me what my answer can and cannot be. Well, obviously, Ovid, who wrote my favorite book, and also Horace. Those two jump right out. I mean, I'm a big fan of Livy as well, but Horace, Livy, and Ovid, certainly. Also Propertius, doesn't get the love he deserves. Rasmus says, best James Branch Cable novel. I think this came up in a live stream or something like that. James Branch Cable is a dude bro conversation stopper. Okay? He is a dead author. And you don't like him. You don't have a favorite novel of his. You don't have a second favorite novel of his. You're not interested in my estimate of his favorite, of his best novel, or my favorite novel of his. This is just a question of stopping conversation. That's all. That's all. That's all there is to it. It's just a question of you bringing up his name so that everyone around you will say, who's that? Conversation stops, everything's quiet, and you get to take the floor. Oh, you don't know? James Branch Cable is? Well, let me tell you who James Branch Cable is. Oh, let me tell you that. At length. Let me tell you who his contemporaries were, and who he influences, and who says that he influences them and whatnot. I don't have a favorite James Branch Cable novel, and neither do you. This is just a dude bro conversation stopper. Andre says, what were the few books you always took when you were traveling? I took a handful. A handful of paperbacks. Horace, Fairy Queen, a whole bunch of others. Grix is back. Which is your personal favorite through hike in the world, and why? Is it the same as the one you think is the objective best? Well, I'm duty bound as an American to say the Appalachian Trail is my favorite through hike in the world, and that it is objectively the best. Joel Swagman Review says, how do you feel about children reading simplified versions of the classics, like Classic Illustrated, etc.? Are they a good way to introduce children to the classics, or should children wait until they're old enough to read the real thing? Did you read any of these types of books when you were a child? I did not read these types of books when I was a child, but I think they're great. And I think you need look no further than for proof of that than all the people on BookTube who say they started out reading that and then hooked them. So that all they wanted to do, I read the children's classic when I was allowed into the children's section of the library, and then I learned that there's an adult version of this book, and now all I want is to get my adult library card and go and read the real copy. How many hundreds and hundreds of people on BookTube alone have said that happened to them in some variation? So obviously these things work. So I'm a big fan of them, yeah. Kit Kat says, what were the books you used to put in your footlocker when you travel? Oh, you got this again. So curious. Is there a list of them I could find? I actually wrote a Steve Reads entry about them a long, long time ago that I thought was not findable, but David Murphy found it. Will it be part of a book? It was, if you watch this channel, I think you could pretty much guess what a lot of those books would be. But there is a list, there is an essay, and will it appear in a book? 2025? I certainly hope so. 2025 is almost half over. David James Olson. Oh, God. Okay, it's a doctoral thesis. Well, let's get through it here. Hi, Steve. It's such a delight to enjoying your channel. Like you, I'm a book-devouring, dog-loving vegan in Massachusetts who revels in the bard's brilliance and frequently indulges in the Shakespeare authorship question. Although I'm aware you advise people not to push their favorite candidate, what are your thoughts on the late Alexander Waugh's incisive YouTube channel about Edward de Vere as the spear shaker? Also, what do you think of Robert Prechter's intriguing online tome proposing that Edward de Vere was similar to Fernando Pessoa and wrote under many pen names, some being Thomas Nash, John Lyly, Robert Greene, and Shakespeare? Thanks. You're trying to provoke me to do an hour on Shakespeare authorship controversy, and I could easily. The Pessoa idea is ridiculous. We have documentary evidence that those people wrote what they wrote. And keep in mind, this is Occam's razor. The more entities you propose, the more mysteries you introduce, the more unlikely is the answer that you have. It is whether it's Edward de Vere, or this same thing has been said about Francis Bacon, that he's a number of Elizabethan authors. He barely was one. He was barely able to be one on his own. And Alexander Waugh, much as I loved him, he was loony. I mean, no, not D.A. Thomas loony, but he was loony. He was nuts. I mean, look at some of the extrapolations that he does in some of his videos. Well, it's all very obvious. It's simple. It's beyond argument. It's beyond dispute. This is 63. That is the square root of 129,000. And someone obvious, this illiterate Italian marble carver obviously knew that, and he encoded it in here. If you look at the statue from this angle at 161 degrees, and if you look at it exactly at sunset, the light is falling on this part of this word, which can easily be extrapolated in the Latin root to the utterly ridiculous. Just utterly ridiculous. It's enjoyable. He's incredibly enjoyable to listen to, but most of his proofs about Shakespeare are utterly ridiculous. They are what happens if you go nuts on this subject. Then you become, if you're lucky and you're eloquent, you become Alexander Waugh. I love him, but he and this Pessoa theory, things like that are what give the authorship a bad name. If you pick a random Alexander Waugh videos, don't pick your favorite. If you pick a random one and show it to somebody, the impression they're going to come away with is not just that he's nuts, but that there's nothing to the question. And that doesn't help any. There is something to the question. So yeah, I'm going to stick with my contention. The minute you start proposing the real author of Shakespeare, you're in trouble. It's good enough just to point out that the guy who the world says is the real author obviously couldn't have been. That's good enough. That ought to be good enough. But anyway, David Snook says, I'm very curious about music. Is there a piece of music, regardless of genre, that really touches you on a deep emotional level? That's a little bit of a loaded question after this last visit from David Murphy. But there's music that touches me emotionally, certainly. Not any one particular piece. Again, David Murphy's probably wincing. But that was mainly wine, I think, and just my happiness at having a guest. But there are pieces that move me more than others. I don't know that I can make a list. Boonton says, welcome to 20K. My question is on your reading of books by Nazis. I've heard that Mein Kampf is almost unreadably dull and turgid, that even some Hitler biographers haven't read the whole thing. I would like to think that every Hitler biographer has, but I don't doubt you might be right, that some of them haven't. You have no right to publish a Hitler biography if you haven't read it. That's no question of that's no reflection on its quality. It doesn't have any quality. But did any books by Nazis produce any insights into their thinking, or were they all banally evil? Well, they weren't all banally evil. Let's not toss that around too easily. Some of them were genuinely, pointedly evil. Nothing banal about it. Some of them were operatically evil, on a large scale, and wanted to be. So it's not the banality of evil. Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil is not meant to say that all evil is banal. That's not true. And the Nazi upper ranks had plenty of examples of people who were not banal in any of their evils. They were very pronounced, very conscious, and very over the top. So let's not be too easy with that. But if you're asking me if any Nazi ever wrote a worthwhile book, no, no, they never did. There's Albert Speer, who wrote after the war, but most don't think he was ever really honest. I imagine there must have been some lower-ranked Germans who wrote post-war reflections about the period and what they did. I have never read one that achieved moral clarity. Never once. I've read a lot of those memoirs. I've never read, well, first of all, there are fewer of them than you think, for obvious reasons. But I've never read one that wasn't performative. I've never read the one that chronicled a change of heart that was actually honest. And I think there's a reason for that. There are a whole bunch of reasons for that. They gave up everything. They sunk everything into that red hat. It was everything to them. It's hard to admit. It's impossible for most people to admit that that was wrong. Fundamentally wrong. And most of the people who sunk in everything to that red hat, then went on to do evil. And they don't want to admit that either. I have never read a good Nazi book, no. Leo Percara says, "Hello, Steve. I'm glad, and I hope, and I ponder." Do you have an example of you stopping someone from doing a conversation stopper? You can't stop them from doing it. For years and years, they did it, and I would view it as a challenge, or I would try to reposition from here after the dead silence had gone on for a minute. I would try to reposition a little, or maybe something like that. Then after that, I did that for years, and then I decided, no, they know what they're doing, and that it's not conversation, and you're here for conversation, so just mock them. Just mock them. Do it to them. If you think I can't mention an author you've never heard of, I don't think anyone watching this channel thinks that. I certainly can. I could drop an atom bomb of a conversation stopper. I just don't do it, because why would you do that? So there's no way to stop them from doing it, though. Is Dude Bro Lit the conversation stoppers of literature? And what about in genre fiction? Well, I don't know that Dude Bro Lit just writ large is the conversation stopper of literature, but once you know that someone is a Dude Bro reader, you know the whole of what you're going to get from them. And you know what they want. They want the women in the kitchen making sandwiches. First of all, let's segregate this living room. What are these femoids doing talking when they should be making food? But then after that, you know what you're going to get from them. They aren't adventurous readers. They aren't flexible readers. I would argue they aren't actually reading at all. They're solving puzzles. They're pulling things apart and putting them back together. So if your conversation is with readers about reading, well, I don't know the conversation stopper, but they are a living dead end to it. Thank you and congratulations. Everybody is happy for you. I don't know about that. I don't think so. Mike Bro says, "Why does no one ever like your videos? Did I miss an I don't do that email?" Well, I think a lot of people don't like my videos because they don't like my videos, right? I'm not all that. I mean, I have lots of viewers that I love and that joke with me, and we've got all sorts of running jokes that have been going on now for years, 9 years, I guess. But most booktubers don't like me, so it doesn't surprise me. TLC says, as Columbo would say, just one more thing. What do you think of Mendelssohn's translation of the Odyssey? Well, I might be writing about it. I liked it. It's a good translation of the Odyssey. Rasmus says, have you ever considered filming yourself reading an entire book from start to finish? Why on earth would I do that? No, I have never considered that. Why on earth would I do that? James Holder is here. What is the state of the little book room? Oh, my God. Oh, James. Oh, my God. I'm trying not to think about it. David Murphy was just here for a visit. Fellow booktuber David Murphy, I say, even though he hasn't made a video in forever. He was just here for a visit. A long visit. He stayed for a week, which is what I want. I want 2 weeks. I want 3 weeks, but he stayed for a week. He does have a life. He does have like 6 or 7 jobs, so he can't stay forever. And we had a whole bunch of things we wanted to do, and did a whole bunch of things, including a whole bunch of just relaxing. We have almost the same tastes in entertainment and music and whatnot, so the evenings were wonderful. But we had a whole bunch of things that we wanted to do. David's list of a whole bunch of things that we wanted to do, and one of those things was to get the little book room in hand. Those of you who don't know what James is talking about, I have the rest of Hyde Cottage, which is full of books, and then I have the little book room, which is, I can close the door on it. It's a little space. It's my favorite books, and they're not in any subject. They're not really in much of any order, and there is space in there. There is empty shelves in there. And I was thinking, I'd get the little book room in hand, and the way I thought to do that, I still think this is true. I think this is the right approach. Is first, I've got to get out of the little book room all the stuff that doesn't belong in there and is just accumulated in there. So, for instance, on the Penguin bookcase, the floor-to-ceiling Penguin bookcase, double stacked. Well, how many duplicates are on there? They should go. There should be any duplicates on there. And the other books, how many duplicates are in here? If it's an exact duplicate, well, it shouldn't be here. It should go. So step number one is to do that and see how much shelf space that clears up. And get all that stuff out of there. All the duplicates, all the stuff that doesn't belong in there. And then, once I know for sure how much room I have in there, I thought the next step would be to go through all the rest of Hyde Cottage and winnow out all the little book room books that haven't made it in there and put them in there to fill all the space in the little book room so there isn't any more. And then I could go from there. At least then I would know what goes in there. Do I want to add a bookcase in there? There's more room for books in there. Do I want to do that? At least then I would know. And that could have been done with David here. It would have been a lot of fun to do. And we didn't do it. And now I think, no, I don't want to do it on my own. I want to do it with a guest. I want to do it with a friend. So I don't know. The little book room is still a work in progress, I guess. Okay, the name I can't pronounce says, hello, in the upcoming month of October, would you please discuss A Night on the Lonesome October? Highly doubtful. Constantino666 says, I know you didn't ask, but come on, we all watch the channel for the 28-year-old hottie influencer. I am not asking. I have learned not to ask why people watch this channel. What do you think of M. John Harrison's post-Vericonian books? I'm reading one of his short story collections, and I'm baffled by the very deliberate absence of any kind of plot. Yeah. It's not true with all of his post-Vericonian stuff. Like Light, everybody likes Light, and I liked it too. But yeah, he definitely thinks that he's gone beyond the genre. I wish I could have a conversation with him about that. Actually, I have the same question for contemporary fiction in general. What's wrong with having a plot? It requires discipline. It requires work. It requires revision. Right? If you have a plot, you have to revise. And no contemporary fiction authors do that. They don't revise. They chin stroke. They navel gaze. And then decide what they wrote drunk and high off their ass at 2 a.m. was actually perfect. So they do all the gestures of revision, but they don't actually revise. And they don't work. Oh, no, absolutely not. You can't work if you're vaping your brains out every hour of every day. So it's the despised genre, people. My gals in the romance genre plot like crazy. It's the despised genre people who do that. And it's become common. I've heard 2 or 3 practitioners of so-called literary fiction say that the whole business of the book just wandering off, it doesn't end, no conclusions of any kind, is actually a conscious choice. How ridiculous. Pull the other one, because it's got bells on it. Just Some Bunny says, hi, Steve. I'm curious to know what happened to your Dickens reading project you mentioned a while back. Congrats on 20K. The Dickens reading project is stalled. Let's just put it that way. Mr. Waldo says, I've read that Vincent Price and William S. Burroughs went to high school together, were in drama club together, and apparently corresponded with each other afterward. But I've seen almost nothing written about this. I don't think any of their letters have been published. Do you know anything about it? No, I don't. Anthony Suppa says, hey, Steve, in which section of the Brattle does most of your book buying take place? The $1, $3, or $5? I don't know. I'd be interested to see the statistical breakdown. Probably the $5 carts. It used to be, once upon a time, before COVID, the $1 carts were the bulk of the lot. Now it's usually 1 or 2 $1 carts. More $3 carts and more $5 carts. Makes sense. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. And I remind myself, it's still a steal. So it doesn't really matter. But probably the $5 carts. Erasmus is here again. Is there a book from the Baltic region that you believe is worthy of praise? And what are your experiences with the region, aside from your admiring of David Lade, who doesn't even speak the bloody language? How dare you? How dare you, sir? There will be no criticism of David Lade on this channel. And how do you know he doesn't speak the language? Maybe he does. Maybe he does. Maybe he's taking time out from obsessive chess playing and the neurotic buying of elk meat in order to learn the language of Estonia. Huge congrats on the milestone. I remember your insistence that 15K was the maximum. Oh, how wrong you were. The million is looming ever closer. No. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I know what I would do. If I had 1 million subscribers on this channel, if I had Jack Edwards money coming in on this channel, I know what I would do. I would use it for travel fare for all of you to bring you here. But in terms of Baltic literature, Bridge on the Drina, I'm due for a reread of Bridge on the Drina. I'm not an expert in the literature of the period of the place at all. Bite Size says, do you think that pop booktube / book talk creators are net positive or negative? Positive, definitely. Something you said a while ago that has stuck with me is that you really can never imagine any of these people actually sitting down and reading in a non-performative manner. Right. Right, I am right about that. I'm firmly believing. When I say that people like Jack Edwards don't read, I'm not telling you to take that on my say so. To say nothing of these glossy creatures on Book Talk. To say nothing of them. I'm talking just about BookTube. When I say these people don't read, I'm not telling you to take my word for it. I'm saying do the experiment yourself. Watch 10 of their videos and then try to imagine, turn everything off and try to imagine them sitting and reading without constantly checking their phone, without constantly checking Instagram, without constantly checking Book Talk. Just the kind of reading that we do, the kind where you sit there and you read. Try to picture them doing that. I firmly believe you can't do it. That's because they don't do it. But nevertheless, whether they do it or not, they are net positive, indisputably. Because whether or not they're lying their asses off about reading and getting summaries from Blinkist, it stands to reason that hundreds of people who are watching them will actually get the bug to do it. I always say, books don't need any help. You give them a toehold and they'll handle themselves just fine in trapping you. They don't need any help. All they need is that foot in the door. They usually don't get it anymore because nobody reads. Everybody's doom scrolling and vaping. But if those book talkers are encouraging people to give books a foot in the door, well, that's going to work for hundreds of people. Who knows how many genuine readers they've made? So they are a net positive, definitely. Anybody cheerleading books is a net positive. Grix is back. So I started reading Infinite Jest because Steve can't be right about everything. Grix. I can be. All right, not everything. Okay, not everything. Not stock car racing. When it comes to books, I am right. When it comes to dogs, I am right. I'm not rubbing your face in that. It's just true. Anyway, what do you have to say? Don't tell me you liked it. But I'm struggling to see what there is to like. Since you have argued with Wallace's admirers for so long, for longer than I have been reading, could you just play devil's advocate and tell us what are the most valid arguments to defend this book's status? I need to know if I might be convinced in the future or should DNF before wasting any more time. I'm sure I'm not the only one. You are wasting your time to read Infinite Jest. It is a waste of time. If I were to steelman its appeal, I would say that it's a kitchen sink book, and that there's a kind of pleasing aspect to that it's this big, maximalist, ample thing. But that would be a very deceitful steelman, because that's not why Dude Bros like it. They like it because there are no women. They like it because it enhances the talismanic magic effect of simply putting words on paper, on a yellow legal pad, on a red checkered tablecloth with a crankshaft right there that you're going to be working on as soon as you're done working on this crankshaft. The book, the reason why Dude Bros love it is not because it's a book. It's because it's a sigil of the way they live in the world. Because it's a place where men are still hunting bison. There is no good, legitimate way to steelman or devil's advocate Infinite Jest. It is a gigantic waste of your time. And I'm right about that. Anyway, Vice English is back. After being a vegan for many years, do you find descriptions of non-vegan meals in fiction off-putting? No, it's not like that for me. I just had guests here. I ate a ton of meat. It's not like that for me at all. I'm certainly reading about meals, about non-vegan meals. Not gonna, oh, gross, I'm triggered. No, nothing like that. No. I had guests here. I gorged on meat. The key here is not special occasions. The key here is not reading. The key here is, are you supporting an industry or are you not? So if you're by yourself, if I'm by myself here right now, the bean is right next to me, and there are a few cars out on the street on a Sunday. There's nobody in the building. There's nobody on the block. There's nobody in the neighborhood. There's just me and the bean. And I'm reading all day long and writing all day long and making some videos. If I'm doing that, well, I've got my water bottle, so I'm well hydrated. But when it comes time to eat meat, it's just so not necessary. Just make a big plate of vegetable rice, and there you go. And no thinking, loving person has ever died along the way. Now, when I ate all that meat when I had guests, I was using the typical rationale, which is that those animals are already dead. And if it's only when you're supporting an industry, and that's a regular habit. It's a regular habit that supports an industry. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not doctrinaire about this. I certainly don't get queasy when I read about meals. No. Uh, Mr. Waldo says, what is your advice about the ergonomics of reading a tablet in bed? Also, we love you, Steve. Wasn't that nice? There aren't many ergonomics for me. Uh, I I don't have much of a question of ergonomics anyway, but I don't read tablet in bed anymore. For a good long time now, I read an e-reader in bed, my Kindle. And it's as light as a feather, so there aren't any ergonomics. It's not hard at all to do. Usually when I lay back on the pillows, the bean is right here, so I can rest the e-reader right there on top of her without bothering her. Luckily, because it's light, I could rest a laptop on my basset hound and she wouldn't have noticed. But Frida will notice if I put too much pressure on her. I'll just do that. She wants to be in contact with me anyway, and it's just as easy as could be. Just go hours that way. And Nassar says, hello, Steve. I recently finished the Jeeves and Wooster books, and I'm now looking for something that might scratch the same itch. Any recommendations? Also, what do you make of Tom Sharp's Wilt series of books? I've never been a big fan. Are they any good? I suppose they are. They have lots of fans. When it comes to Jeeves and Wooster, I think the element that most people like is the world of it. The books are entertaining, sure, but they're also a world that is wonderful. That you can just go into that world when the real world is not wonderful. And there are things that do that, definitely. I mean, I would argue the Aubrey and Maturin novels by Patrick O'Brien, that they're not to everybody's taste. Or Benson's books on Map and Lucia, those are often cited. Also, The Little World of Don Camillo. Giovanni Guareschi's books on Don Camillo are wonderful, and they are very similar. They are an enclosed, wonderful little world. I have been greatly relishing the literary essays of Virginia Woolf and V.S. Pritchett these last few weeks. I did the same with Louis Kronenberger and Alfred Kazin last year, and it was delightful. Are there any other literary essays you would recommend? Yeah, there are quite a few. Too many to list here. You didn't mention Cyril Connolly. You might want to. Lastly, what do you think about the works of Chris Hedges? I'm not a fan. India ATM is back. What are your thoughts on Tom Wolfe's books? I largely like them. I don't think he's written barely any. He wrote barely anything I didn't like. India ATM is back again. What are your thoughts on Gene Roddenberry's novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture? I've heard it's got some odd ideas. Would the franchise have benefited from these ideas? No. I like the book, but the franchise would not have benefited from them at all. In I'm not spoiling anything because I'm sure all of you have seen the movie. In the movie, the Enterprise encounters a gigantic cloud, V'ger. And at one point, it sends a probe through the vessel just to see what's what. And it evaporates a crew member, Lieutenant Ilea. And she returns, but it's not her. It's an artificial duplicate of her, a machine, an android of her. And she breaks through a metal door, and she has a couple of wonderful plot points. Persis Khambrada does a great job doing it. It's a really neat thing in the movie. But in the movie and in the book, Matt Decker or Will Decker is Ilea's lover. And in the book, when she comes back as a machine, the franchise would not have benefited. It almost did, right? Tasha Yar and Data in one particular Next Generation episode. Let's just not go there. PHXSNS says, hey, Steve, did you happen to read Dan Nadel's new biography of Robert Crumb yet? And if so, what did you think? I did not read it. I am probably not going to read it. Mindoc says, in a recent book haul, you got Inside Outside by Jose Farmer and Blood World by Lawrence Janifer. What did you make of these books? I haven't got to them yet. M.M. Jones says, the Brattle sounds amazing. Do you know of other locations that might be comparable? Continental U.S., since I have no plans to board a plane. Okay. Again, I don't want to darken the Q&A. You should board a plane. You should leave this country. But in the playfulness of the question, of course, the ones that come up are Powell's books on the West Coast and the Strand in New York City. There's two book meccas. Also the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut. Griffonsi says, do you think Thomas Pynchon categorizes as dude bro? Yeah, I think he does. Judging by, even if I judge just alone by their reaction to the announcement of a new book from him, I think he does. I think they consider him one of their own. Marianne says, I have the Oxford World Classics edition of Sir Charles Grandison. Do you have this volume? I do, yes. Byron the Well says, could you recommend a few books on beavers? I certainly recommend Bud Goldfarb's book, Eager, and my interview with him, if you can find it. I certainly recommend that. James Ricala is here. Congratulations on Tony K. Why was the Impusium on your 10 worst novels list in 2024? All fours came out in 2024, for Pete's sake. Should I make 30? Should it be 30 bad books instead of 10? Would that help? The Pelglar Papers says, hi, Steve. Have you seen the TV series based on Son of the Century? Haven't read the book yet, but I'm loving it so far. Did not see it, no. H.P. Lovecraft says, I've seen somewhere you saying you can read multiple languages. Can you read in Portuguese? Not really, no. If so, what are your thoughts on the car? No, yeah, not really. Can't really read in Portuguese. John something or other. Steve, is Harlan Ellison a dude bro author? If they knew about him, they would probably adopt him, yeah. I recently reread Croton and was very conflicted about what he's trying to do with it. Yeah, you and me both. And him too. I personally don't think he is a dude bro author, more so just that he is very dude bro adjacent. They would love him if they knew about him. He has all the requisite stuff. I think the one thing that would put them off from him, is that they would if they read enough of him, they would probably get the impression that he would savage them. He would not want to be adopted by them. He would savage them. So maybe they would get that sense and leave him alone. Richard Adcock says, do you have a favorite fantasy book that is not Lord of the Rings? The Once and Future King. Brett Zakari says, I've heard you say before that you don't think monotheism is compatible with human nature. What do you mean by that, and why do you think that is? Well, it's because humans know people. Humans know lots of people, and all people are different. There are all sorts of different personalities. When you look at the world, which is supposed to be reflecting the will or the actions of gods, goblins, I guess, in religion, the world is something they pay attention to and do things to. It certainly doesn't look like one person. It looks like multiple people, just like life. That's why I think humans are disposed to polytheism, is because it reflects, life, where all sorts of different personalities, different moods, different realms of influence and whatnot, which is why every religion that mankind has ever invented has been a polytheism. I think that makes sense. Chuck Moss says, stopped at the 14-second mark. Okay, well, I'm not. So, say it out so, Joe. What an embarrassment to think that many people might like someone. There you go. Yeah, but I didn't know what you're talking about, because I didn't stop at the 14-second mark. Heather Gregg is here. Congrats on being followed by 1,000 people and 19,000 dogs who have evolved opposable thumbs. Is it true that you start each day by looking in the mirror and saying, thank God I'm not James Joyce, Cormac McCarthy, or Ernest Hemingway? No, I mostly start by saying, thank God I'm not Christopher Russell. Grix is back. Which is your favorite movie script that is not a Shakespeare adaptation, or The Lion in Winter, or Man for All Seasons? Again, that's been the theme of this Q&A, is people telling me what my answers can and cannot be. What on earth? Probably 12 Angry Men. D. Aurelius says, you are quite the character. You can use words. You don't have to use the letter U and the letter R. You can use words. That's why you can type out the word, you hit 20K. I guess. I think there are plenty of other characters on YouTube. Grix is back. Have you ever considered opening an animal shelter? Do you collaborate with any NGOs? No to both. Very much no to both. Burdell says, hello, Steve. Was the Kornilov affair a comical case of military telephone or a legitimate attempt at a coup? Does anybody else in this Q&A know what that is? Is that a dude bro conversation stopper? Does anybody else know what that is? But no, I don't think it was a comical case of military telephone. No. Grix is back. Can you recommend a good biography of President Mujica of Uruguay? No, I cannot recommend. No, I cannot. Good or bad. Grix is back again. Do you think toxic masculinity is an oxymoron, or do you find the term actually useful? The term is useful, definitely. It accurately describes a kind of masculinity. I would argue that it's not only toxic, but incredibly insecure. I think that's what defines it, is insecure. But it's definitely true. Definitely. Oh my God, you need look no further than the college bars on Lansdowne Street when students are here in town on any Thursday or Friday night to encounter toxic masculinity out the wazoo. Or really any neighborhood dive bar in small town America, in the West or in the South. Toxic masculinity definitely exists. Definitely. And it's not the same thing as masculinity. at all. They're not oxymoron. They're not synonymous with each other. Toxic masculinity is insecure masculinity, and believe me, it's not just women who hate it, and women do hate it. All these pickup artists, all these Andrew Tate clones that think that the key to a woman's heart, the key to getting a woman is through toxic masculinity. I've obviously never talked to a woman, and that is obvious. They obviously never have talked to a woman. But telling a woman to make you a sandwich is not talking to her. If you've talked to a woman, you know that women find toxic masculinity every bit as repulsive as men do. But women very much don't find actual masculinity repulsive at all. Not at all. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing sexist about that. There's nothing that needs me to read the room or be canceled about that. Women don't find actual masculinity repulsive at all. Not in the slightest. Let's see here. Where were we? Black Oak. I just noticed that MKV has 25,000 subscribers. Thought you should know. Why did you think I should know? Asshole. Why did you think I should know that? Can you explain a reason for that, asshole, that isn't an asshole reason? So you're that guy. You're an asshole. Okay. The people who watch this channel wanted me to do a Q&A. They'd like me to do a Q&A every week. They certainly have been asking for years to do a 20K Q&A. It's not a glory trip on my part. And why do you think I should know, asshole? Do you think I think that somehow that is an achievement that's better than Michael K. Vaughan? Do you think that he thinks that I'm glorying in 20K subscribers? I'd love to know. Actually, I wouldn't want to know your reason, because no one likes knowing assholes. And they don't like assholes showing up either in something where they're having fun, asshole. So I don't think you thought I should know, asshole. You just think I think you just thought you should tell me, asshole. And you did. So now, hopefully, you'll do what every asshole should do and bugger off. I'm hoping that's true. And please tell me we're not going to end on an asshole point. Because Black Oak is an asshole. Thought you should know. Thanks, asshole. Louise Reader. Good. Okay. We're going to end with you. Fantastic. I don't want to end on that note. Congrats on 20K, Steve. We always knew you'd get there. I don't know about that. I really want to know if you actually have any unread books in the house. Obviously not the newly arrived new releases, but older books on your shelves. And how long does it take you to get through reading any of your Brattle Halls? I won't say I don't have any. I have one bookcase. I have one bookcase that is the top shelf is this month's new releases. Then on the left-hand side are all of the new releases for upcoming months. And on the right-hand side are all the new used books I've got. The new stuff that I've got, like at thrift stores with David Murphy or the Brattle or the Book Barn or whatever. Those are all on that bookcase. I'm not saying that there are plenty of books, those new used acquisitions that I haven't read yet. I didn't read them. They weren't rebuys, and they're still unread. And there are plenty of books on the other side, on new releases coming out in the year that I haven't read. But it's really just that bookcase. I usually, for books that are on the new used part, usually I have to read them off there. I don't have to. I want to. Usually I want to read them off there before I put them out in the collection where they could just get lost. But the rest of the books that are climbing the walls here in the rest of Hyde Cottage, or that are all in the little book room, most of those are stuff that I've read. I've concentrated my question marks, my undiscovered territory, to just that bookcase, largely just that bookcase. I'm trying to think. No, it is just that bookcase. If you go anywhere else, if you go to any other bookcase here and pluck a book off the shelf, I have read it. That's why it's on the shelf. So no, I don't disseminate things. I just recently, that used book section it has the hardcovers on it and the trade paperbacks, and then I double stacked all the mass markets in front of it because I got 100 mass market paperbacks. And I just recently took all those mass markets and put them somewhere else, so they weren't filling that bookcase. But I was able to do that because all of them were rereads. I've read them all already. It's just additions and cover art and whatnot, and left all the others. And there's quite a few there that I have read that can go. I keep meaning to deal with that bookcase. I haven't done it any more than I've dealt with the little book room. But anyway, that's it. Thank you, Louise Reader, for making sure we don't end with an asshole comment. God almighty. You know, the classic metric of BookTube, BookTube has been saying it forever, that you can get all these fun questions, but it's the one asshole comment that's going to stick with you for the rest of the day. I'm going to try not to have that be true. I don't like to give assholes any kind of victory, even a little one, even an internal one. You thought you should know. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Because we're all having fun. You thought I should know that. Assholes. They're just irredeemable and there's nothing you can do about them. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. If I had seen that comment, I would have deleted it rather than get to it and have it be on my mind. We will end with Louise Reader, which is that the section of my library that is not read is contained. It is contained. It is one bookcase. It's a big bookcase, but it's one bookcase. All the rest I have read and hopefully reread. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you all for all the questions. This was wonderful. We will do this again. Never. Because this channel will never, in fact, reach 21K. Okay? So we'll never have to do that. And at least now I know a name that I can look for to make sure that I don't get this happening again. God almighty. I'm not going to let it ruin my day. So I'll wrap this up and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.